The crystalline towers of Harmonia glittered against the amber sky as shuttlecraft converged on the Consensus Grand Hall. Admiral Zetera adjusted her ceremonial mantle, forearms working in perfect synchronization to align the iridescent fabric that displayed her battle honors. Today marked the culmination of a 3-cycle campaign against the Voth swarm and a personal triumph for her innovative battle strategies. "The Council awaits, Admiral," her aide Trilvex announced, antennae twitching with excitement. Zetera nodded, her crest rippling with controlled pride. "Then we shall not keep them waiting." The Grand Hall's vaulted ceiling opened to the stars above, the nebula beyond bathing the assembled dignitaries in soft purple light. Representatives from all 27 consensus species filled the chamber, their disparate physiologies united by expressions of victory and relief. Near the center, the High Speaker Morella, a gaseous entity contained within an ornate hovering sphere, pulsed with bright yellow approval. "Approach, Admiral Zetera of the Cephide." Morella's voice resonated through the chamber. "The Galactic Consensus recognizes your triumph." Zetera glided forward on her gravitational stabilizers, aware of the attention from ambassadors, military commanders, and cultural attaches from across 5 sectors. The Antares campaign had been her most challenging command. The Voth's hive mind tactics had nearly overwhelmed the Consensus defensive grid in the early engagements. The Admiral prevailed against numerical superiority through tactical brilliance, announced Subspeaker Drav, a silicon-based entity whose crystalline form refracted the light into dazzling patterns. "The resource worlds of Antares remain secure within our protective embrace." Holographic displays activated around the chamber, showcasing the elegant formation of consensus battlecruisers executing Zetera's innovative shield wall maneuver. The gathered audience trilled, hummed, and flashed appreciative bioluminescence as the recording displayed the decisive moment. Voth bioships trapped in a 3-dimensional encirclement, their coordinated retreat cut off by precisely calculated gravitational lines. A serving drone approached with a tray of celebratory nectars as Zetera accepted the stellar commendation, the Consensus's highest military honor. She selected a crystal flute of Arcturian sky wine, raising it in acknowledgement. "The victory belongs to all who serve the harmony of our shared civilization," she said, her translator converting her native harmonic speech into the standardized consensus language. "May the Voth find wisdom in defeat and seek peaceful coexistence with enlightened species." The traditional toast received appreciative clicks and whistles from the assembly. Zetera was about to elaborate when she noticed a commotion near the communications alcove. Junior Officer Krendall was engaged in urgent conversation with several Science Directorate analysts, their expressions registering alarm. Excusing herself from a Medusoid ambassador, Zetera moved smoothly across the chamber, her sense of celebration fading. "Explain this interruption, officer," she commanded. Krendall straightened immediately. "Admiral, our long-range arrays detected an anomalous engagement in Sector 47 Delta. Unregistered vessels repelled a Voth scouting party." Unregistered? A non-consensus species? This was unusual. Most spacefaring civilizations within range had long since joined the Consensus for mutual protection. "Yes, Admiral. The system contains 9 planets orbiting a standard G-type star. We've detected radio transmissions from the 3rd planet. The natives refer to their world as Earth." The senior analyst, a spine lethologian with oversized optical organs, added, "Their technology appears primitive, chemical propulsion, basic fission energy. Yet somehow they drove off 6 Voth biomechs." "Impossible," Zetera stated flatly. "The Voth would overwhelm such a civilization immediately." Nevertheless, Admiral, the data is conclusive. This Earth not only survived contact, but preserved their communication networks. They're broadcasting victory announcements across their planetary spectrum. Zitera's crest flattened with skepticism. A curious anomaly, but hardly relevant to our strategic concerns. Document the findings and forward a standard first contact assessment to the diplomatic course. She turned back toward the celebration, dismissing the matter. The consensus had greater priorities than some lucky primitives who would likely seek protection once they realized what lurked among the stars. Deep beneath Earth's Himalayan mountain range, Colonel Weichen studied the intercepted transmission with growing interest. The alien communication encryption had been challenging, but Earth's quantum computers had finally broken the pattern. "Send this to all UNDF command centers," he ordered. Operation Silverback is now on accelerated timeline. On his monitor, the consensus celebration continued, blissfully unaware they were being watched. The diplomatic reception chamber of Harmonia Station fell silent as the airlock cycled open. Admiral Zaytera observed with professional curiosity as the delegation from Earth entered. 5 vital beings with bilateral symmetry and surprisingly familiar features. Despite their alien nature, there was something almost Cephide-like in their eyes, calculating, measuring, assessing. "Welcome, representatives of Earth," intoned High Speaker Morella, her containment sphere hovering at the perfect diplomatic height. "The Galactic Consensus acknowledges your journey and extends formal greeting." The lead human stepped forward, a female with short dark hair and piercing eyes. "Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Defense Force. We bring greetings and thanks for accepting our delegation." Her voice carried naturally, without obvious translation technology. Zaytera noted this oddity immediately. How had these humans mastered consensus standard speech patterns without prior contact? The mystery deepened when she examined their vessel through the observation portal. A modest transport with minimal defensive capabilities, yet it had somehow navigated the complex spatial distortions that typically confounded less advanced civilizations. Subspeaker Drav approached the humans, crystal form chiming softly with skepticism. "Your arrival is unexpected. Our records indicate your species has barely achieved rudimentary space travel within your home system." Captain Vasquez smiled diplomatically. "We are quick learners, Subspeaker. While our public space program progresses steadily, certain breakthroughs have remained classified." The gathering of consensus representatives shifted uncomfortably at this admission. Secrecy within a species was considered regressive behavior by consensus ethical standards. And what brings Earth to seek the consensus? Zaytera asked directly, stepping forward to study these humans more closely. "Survival," Vasquez replied simply. "We detected the Voth incursion into our system 18 months ago and repelled it. But we're under no illusions about our long-term prospects alone. We seek provisional membership and knowledge exchange." The council members exchanged glances. The Voth operated in coordinated hive clusters. If Earth had truly defeated a scouting party, it suggested either tremendous luck or hidden capabilities. High Counselor San, a methane-breathing elder whose translucent skin revealed pulsing circulatory fluids, leaned forward. "What can Earth offer the consensus in this time of conflict?" "Our unique perspective," Vasquez responded. "Humans specialize in asymmetrical warfare and adaptation. We notice your consensus forces employ standardized tactical frameworks, elegant and powerful, but perhaps predictable to an enemy that operates on collective intelligence." The Grand Admiral bristled visibly at this assessment. "Our battle doctrines have been refined across 5 centuries of theoretical modeling and practical engagement. And yet 3 consensus worlds have fallen in the past cycle, Vasquez noted softly, producing shocked murmurs from junior delegates who hadn't been briefed on these classified losses. Zyterra studied the human captain with newfound wariness. "You seem remarkably well-informed for a species making first contact." Vasquez met her gaze without flinching. "As I said, Admiral, we're quick learners." The provisional membership treaty was signed 3 rotations later, granting Earth observer status and minor support roles in the ongoing conflict. The humans were assigned quarters in the diplomatic wing, their movements subtly monitored by security drones. That evening, Zyterra found Captain Vasquez alone in the strategic Arcos, studying historical battle formations with unusual focus. "Finding our tactical records informative, Captain?" Zyterra inquired, intentionally startling the human. Vasquez didn't flinch. "Enlightening, Admiral." "Your pincer void maneuver against the Arcturian rebellion bears striking similarities to an Earth strategy called the Cannae envelopment, developed over 2,000 years ago by a general named Hannibal." Zyterra's crest rippled with surprise. "Your species has been waging war for 2 millennia. "Much longer," Vasquez replied, her smile never reaching her eyes. "It's practically our species' defining trait." Later that night, as the human vessel prepared for departure with promises to return with additional diplomatic personnel, Zyterra ordered a full scan of their ship. The results showed nothing unusual, except for quantum-encrypted communications bursting toward Earth at regular intervals. The transmission logs showed a single unencrypted message sent just before departure. Phase 1 complete. Emergency klaxon shattered the serenity of Harmonia's central command as Admiral Zyterra rushed through the gleaming corridors. Her ceremonial mantle had been replaced by battle armor, her forearms deftly manipulating multiple data feeds as she moved. The Situation Room doors parted automatically, revealing a scene of controlled chaos. "Status report," she commanded, taking her position at the central tactical display. Fleet Commander Vexlor, his carapace dulled with exhaustion, gestured toward the holographic projection. "The Voth have launched a coordinated offensive across 3 sectors. Outpost Gamma 9 has fallen. Colonies at Proxima Helix and Tau Virginis are under heavy assault." Zyterra studied the tactical display with growing concern. The Voth formations were unlike anything they had previously encountered, more aggressive, more coordinated, seemingly anticipating consensus defensive patterns. "They've adapted their tactics," she realized aloud. "They're countering our standard response protocols." High Counselor Sand's holographic form materialized beside her. "Admiral, the Cephide colony at New Azure reports Voth bioships have breached the orbital defense grid. Civilian evacuations are underway, but planetary defense systems are failing." The strategic implications were clear. New Azure wasn't merely a colony. It housed the Consensus's primary quantum communications array, linking defensive systems across 17 star systems. If it fell, entire sectors would be isolated, vulnerable. "Divert the 7th Fleet to reinforce New Azure," Zyterra ordered. "The 7th is engaged at Proxima Helix," Vexlor responded grimly. "Nearest reinforcements are 4 days away at maximum FTL. The colony will fall within hours," Xan stated flatly, methane bubbling anxiously within his translucent form. The Situation Room doors opened again, admitting Captain Vasquez. The human moved with calm purpose despite lacking authorization for this restricted area. Security drones hovered uncertainly, their programming conflicted about this new provisional ally. "The Earth delegation requests permission to assist with the defense of New Azure," Vasquez announced without preamble. Several consensus officers made sounds of derision. Zyterra understood their skepticism, What could Earth's limited resources possibly contribute to a battle of this magnitude? This is a consensus military matter. Subcommander Peltrin objected. It's a matter of survival, Vasquez countered evenly. New Azure falls, and the Voth gain access to your quantum network. The strategic implications affect all species, including mine. Zaytera studied the human carefully. What assistance could Earth possibly offer? Your observer vessel carries no significant armaments. We have military assets that can reach New Azure within 3 days, Vasquez replied. The statement caused a ripple of disbelief through the command staff. Even at the most advanced consensus FTL velocities, Earth forces would require at least 2 weeks to reach the embattled colony. Impossible, stated Vexilor flatly. No known propulsion system. No known consensus propulsion system, Vasquez corrected. Request permission to deploy Earth defensive forces to New Azure, Admiral. The command center fell silent. Zaytera weighed her options rapidly. The colony was already doomed without immediate reinforcement. Whatever game these humans were playing, their intervention could hardly worsen the strategic situation. Permission granted, Zaytera decided. But understand, Captain, if this is some diplomatic ploy, the consequences. This is no ploy, Admiral, Vasquez interrupted, activating her communication device. Silverback protocol authorized. Authentication code, Thermopila. The human's demeanor shifted subtly as she received acknowledgement. For the first time since their meeting, Zaytera saw something genuine in the human's expression. A predatory satisfaction that sent an involuntary ripple down her crest. Earth forces will arrive at New Azure in exactly 72 hours, Vasquez stated with absolute certainty. I request temporary observer status within your command structure to coordinate the joint operation. Zaytera nodded reluctantly. Granted. She gestured to her aide. Assign Captain Vasquez appropriate clearances. As the human joined the tactical officers, Zaytera received a private message from High Counselor San. Watch this human closely. Their confidence suggests either delusion or dangerous capability. Zaytera's response was simple. We shall soon discover which. The command center of New Azure's orbital defense platform had devolved into a grim countdown to defeat. Admiral Zaytera observed the tactical displays with stoic resignation. 70 hours had passed since Captain Vasquez's bold promise, and the colony's situation had deteriorated by the hour. Voth bioships have breached the secondary defense grid, reported Commander Trell, his bioluminescent patterns dimmed with exhaustion. Civilian evacuation stands at 63%. We cannot hold the spaceport beyond the next 12 hours. Zaytera nodded solemnly. The remaining consensus vessels fought with admirable discipline, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. The elegant shield harmonics that had proven so effective in the Antares campaign were being systematically disrupted by some new Voth countermeasure. Captain Vasquez stood quietly at a secondary console, monitoring communications with an intensity that bordered on obsession. The human had barely spoken in the past day, checking chronometers with increasing frequency. Your promised reinforcements appear to be delayed, Captain, Zaytera noted with carefully controlled frustration. Vasquez checked her device again. 1 hour and 17 minutes remaining until scheduled arrival, Admiral. Perhaps it's time to acknowledge the limitations of Earth's capabilities, Zaytera suggested, forearms gesturing toward the tactical display, showing overwhelming Voth superiority. No shame exists in recognizing technological constraints. The human's response was interrupted by a junior sensor officer's startled exclamation. Energy spike detected. Massive spatial distortion forming at coordinates 227 by 84 by 115. All eyes turned to the main display as reality itself seemed to tear open in the space above New Azure. The rift expanded rapidly, spatial distortion meters registering unprecedented readings. Voth reinforcements, demanded Zyterra, crest flaring in alarm. Negative, responded the sensor officer. Pattern doesn't match known Voth signatures. The officer hesitated. Admiral, I've never seen readings like these. The rift stabilized, and through it emerged something impossible. 5 massive vessels, angular and dark, emerged in perfect formation. Each dwarfed the largest consensus battlecruiser, their hulls bristling with weapon systems of unfamiliar design. The command center fell silent in collective shock. Captain Vasquez smiled for the first time in days. Right on schedule. A communication request lit up the central console. Zyterra hesitated only briefly before accepting. "This is Admiral Catherine Way of Earth Dreadnought Thermopylae," announced a calm human voice. "United Earth Defense Force has arrived as requested. We are engaging Voth hostiles and request targeting data and IFF recognition codes for all consensus vessels." Zyterra stared at Vasquez in disbelief. "These are yours." Earth's first defense fleet, Vasquez confirmed. 5 Dreadnought-class warships, Thermopylae, Normandy, Marathon, Stalingrad, and Iwo Jima. Before Zyterra could respond, the tactical officer called out, "Earth vessels are accelerating directly toward the Voth formation." On the display, the human ships moved with surprising speed for their size, not adopting the standard evasive maneuvers used by consensus vessels. Instead, they drove straight into the heart of the Voth fleet. "They'll be torn apart," Commander Trell predicted, watching in horror as Voth bioweapons converged on the lead vessel. But the expected destruction never came. The corrosive biomatter that had dissolved consensus shields on contact merely splashed against the Earth vessel's hull, leaving minimal damage. Meanwhile, the Dreadnought's lateral arrays erupted with blindingly fast projectiles, physical ammunition, not energy weapons, that tore through Voth bioships with devastating efficiency. "Kinetic weapons?" Zyterra whispered in astonishment. "They're using mass accelerators." "Railguns," Vasquez corrected. 30 terawatt electromagnetic accelerators firing depleted uranium rounds at 8% light speed. Primitive, but effective. The tactical display updated as hundreds of smaller craft launched from the Earth Dreadnoughts, fighter squadrons, and what appeared to be boarding craft. "Captain, those smaller vessels are on intercept trajectories with the Voth command ships," Trell observed incredulously. "Marine deployment pods," Vasquez explained casually. "Special forces in powered combat armor. They'll breach the Voth ships and neutralize them from inside." Zyterra's crest flattened in shock. "Your people voluntarily board enemy vessels. That's standard procedure," Vasquez finished. "Especially effective against hive-based opponents." Within 30 minutes, the battle had transformed. The Voth, faced with an enemy unlike any they had encountered, began a disorganized retreat. Earth vessels pursued relentlessly, their savage efficiency dismantling the once overwhelming alien force. Zyterra turned to Vasquez, her voice quiet. "What else has Earth been hiding?" The emergency session of the Galactic Consensus High Council had been underway for 6 hours. The circular chamber, normally a model of decorum and measured deliberation, crackled with tension. Representatives from all 27 member species sat in concentric rings around the central podium, where Admiral Elena Vasquez stood calmly beneath the scrutiny of the entire consensus leadership. "Let us be perfectly clear. High Speaker Morella's containment sphere pulsed with agitation. Earth concealed its true military capabilities during provisional membership negotiations, a direct violation of consensus transparency protocols. Admiral Vasquez nodded. We did. The blunt admission sent a wave of murmurs through the assembly. Furthermore, continued Subspeaker Drav, crystalline form chiming with indignation. Your vessels employ weapons technologies explicitly restricted by consensus ethical guidelines, including kinetic mass drivers and nuclear payload missiles. Also true, Vasquez confirmed without apology. Admiral Zaytara, seated in the military advisory section, studied the human with newfound wariness. In the 3 days since the Battle of New Azure, everything she thought she knew about humans had been appended. The recording of Earth's dreadnoughts tearing through the Voth fleet played on a loop in her mind. High Counselor San floated forward. Perhaps most disturbing, Admiral Vasquez, is the revelation that Earth has been monitoring consensus communications for decades. This constitutes espionage on an unprecedented scale. We prefer the term strategic intelligence gathering, Vasquez replied. And before this council votes to revoke Earth's membership, I suggest you consider the tactical reality. 5 Earth dreadnoughts accomplished what 3 consensus battle fleets could not. The chamber fell silent at this uncomfortable truth. The Voth are retreating across all fronts, Vasquez continued, activating a holographic display showing real-time battle updates. They're abandoning positions they've held for months. They fear us in a way they never feared the consensus. Admiral Zaytara rose from her seat. The Council deserves to know the full extent of Earth's military capabilities. Vasquez nodded and activated a more detailed projection. United Earth Defense Force currently maintains 23 Dreadnought-class vessels, 47 cruiser-class vessels, over 200 destroyer and frigate-class support ships, and approximately 8,000 fighter craft. Our primary shipyards are concealed within the atmospheres of Jupiter and Saturn, with secondary facilities in the asteroid belt and lunar underground complexes. The display showed massive construction facilities hidden within gas giant storms and beneath lunar regolith, each producing vessels of startling size and power. How did you conceal this from our observation networks? Demanded the Thelosian representative. Your networks observed exactly what we wanted them to see, Vasquez explained. Earth's public space program has proceeded at a modest pace. Conventional rockets, small orbital stations, while our military development remained hidden. We've been jamming or redirecting your probes for nearly 50 years. 50 years? Zaytara's crest rippled with disbelief. Earth has known about the consensus for half a century. We intercepted our first consensus transmission in 2089, 53 Earth years ago, Vasquez confirmed. When we decoded your communications about the Voth threat, we accelerated our military preparations. The Voth scout ships that entered our system weren't repelled by luck. They encountered our defense grid and were systematically eliminated. The council chamber erupted in overlapping exclamations and questions. High Speaker Morella pulsed a command for silence. This revelation leaves us with a profound dilemma, Morella stated. Earth has violated our most sacred principles of transparency, yet demonstrated capacity to turn the tide against the Voth. Admiral Zaytara moved to the central floor, her forearms extended in the formal gesture of military assessment. I have commanded consensus forces for 30 cycles. In that time, I have never witnessed combat efficiency comparable to the Earth dreadnoughts at New Azure. She turned to face Vasquez directly. What I cannot understand is why a species would devote such resources to weapons of war before achieving widespread interstellar exploration. It defies logical development. Vasquez's expression softened slightly. Because, Admiral, humanity has never known lasting peace. Our history is written in conflict, our greatest advances forged in adversity. She looked around at the assembled representatives. You achieved unity before reaching the stars. We bring the stars our scars and the determination they taught us. The command deck of the Earth Dreadnought Thermopylae hummed with disciplined activity as Admiral Zyterra followed Admiral Vasquez through the massive vessel. 2 weeks had passed since the emergency council session, and after heated debate, the consensus had formally accepted Earth's expanded role in the war effort. Now, final preparations were underway for the first coordinated Earth consensus offensive. Your crew operates with impressive efficiency, Zyterra observed, watching human officers move purposefully between stations. The stark utilitarian design of the command center contrasted sharply with the elegant, organic layouts of consensus vessels. They've trained for this their entire careers, Vasquez replied. Many come from military families going back generations. Zyterra's translator struggled with the concept. Your species maintains hereditary warrior castes. Not exactly. But military service has deep cultural significance for many Earth nations. Vasquez paused at a tactical display showing the upcoming battle plan. The Proxima Delta system has strategic importance to both the consensus and the VOF. Our intelligence suggests they've reinforced the orbital platforms with their newest bioship variants. The display showed an intricate battle formation. Earth dreadnoughts positioned at the vanguard with consensus vessels arranged in support patterns behind them. It inverted traditional consensus doctrine, which placed the most valuable assets at the center of defensive formations. Your tactical approach remains counterintuitive, Zyterra noted. Placing your capital ships in the most vulnerable positions defies established fleet protocols. Human warships are designed to take punishment, Vasquez explained, highlighting the Dreadnought specifications. 4 meters of composite armor plating, redundant systems, compartmentalized hull sections. They can absorb damage that would shatter your more elegant vessels. A young human officer approached with a data tablet. Final fleet coordination protocols, Admiral. The consensus vessels are having trouble integrating with our targeting systems. Vasquez reviewed the information. Have Lieutenant Park modify their fire control interfaces. We need seamless coordination if this is going to work. As the officer departed, Zyterra's attention was drawn to another display showing human Marines in powered armor suits conducting drills in a massive bay. The heavily armored figures moved with startling speed despite equipment that appeared to weigh hundreds of kilograms. Your boarding tactics remain most perplexing, she admitted. The concept of physically entering enemy vessels during combat. Sometimes you need boots on the ground, or the deck, Vasquez replied. VOF ships have centralized neural clusters. Our Marines can disable them from inside more effectively than external weapons fire. An alert chimed throughout the ship. All personnel to battle stations. Combat drop in 30 minutes. The journey to Proxima Delta passed intense preparation. When the combined fleet emerged from FTL, the VOF response was immediate and overwhelming. Bioships swarmed toward them in far greater numbers than intelligence had predicted. They've been expecting us, Zyterra observed grimly from her position in the auxiliary command center. Vasquez nodded sharply. Consensus formation is holding. All Earth vessels, advance to engagement range. Weapons-free, prioritize targets by size classification. The battle unfolded with brutal intensity. Earth dreadnoughts charged forward, their massive railguns accelerating projectiles to relativistic speeds while absorbing punishing biological attacks. Consensus vessels provided precision energy strikes against VOF weak points identified by Earth's targeting systems. From her observer position, Zterra watched with professional admiration as the human vessels executed maneuvers that consensus tactical doctrine would consider suicidal. The Earth destroyer Shiloh took devastating damage to its propulsion systems while protecting a consensus medical frigate, yet continued fighting. Shiloh reports critical reactor containment failure, announced a communications officer. Captain Reynolds requests permission to implement Protocol Omega. Vasquez's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Permission granted. Consensus vessels in sectors 7 and 8 clear the engagement zone. Zterra watched in disbelief as the crippled destroyer's engines flared to life one final time. Instead of retreating, the vessel accelerated directly toward the central node of a massive Voth hive ship, its remaining weapons firing continuously to clear a path. The crew, Zterra began. They cannot possibly. They knew the mission parameters, Vask said quietly. Sometimes victory requires sacrifice. The destroyer's impact created a blinding flash as its destabilized reactor detonated inside the Voth vessel. When the sensors cleared, a critical gap had opened in the Voth formation. All vessels advance through Sector 8, Vask is ordered. The Shiloh has given us our opening. As the combined fleet surged forward into the breach, Zterra finally understood what separated human warfare from consensus doctrine. It wasn't technology or tactics, but a willingness to pay any price for victory, a concept as terrifying as it was effective. The Strategic Operations Center aboard Harmonia Station buzzed with unprecedented activity. 4 months of combined Earth consensus operations had pushed the Voth back across multiple sectors. The massive holographic display at the center of the room showed a dramatically altered galactic map. Territories once firmly under Voth control now glowed with the blue of reclaimed consensus space. Admiral Zterra and Admiral Vasquez stood side by side, studying the latest intelligence reports. Despite their different physiologies, both leaders showed signs of exhaustion. Zterra's crest hung limply, while dark circles underlined Vasquez's eyes. The Voth are falling back to these coordinates, Vasquez noted, highlighting a distant star system near the galactic rim. All captured Voth commanders commit suicide rather than reveal its significance, but data from their navigation systems consistently points to this location. Zterra analyzed the coordinates. That sector has never been properly surveyed. No known habitable worlds exist there. The latest data from our deep recon drones suggests otherwise, Vasquez countered, uploading new information. The holographic display zoomed in to reveal a yellow star with 11 planetary bodies, the third of which showed atmosphere readings consistent with a life-sustaining world. High Speaker Morella's containment sphere drifted into the operations center, accompanied by representatives from the Council of 17, the Emergency War Council formed after Earth's integration into the consensus military structure. Your findings have merit, Admirals, Morella acknowledged. However, the Council remains divided on the appropriate response. The Thelosian representative stepped forward, massive optical organs blinking rapidly. We have successfully repelled the Voth from consensus space. Many believe we should establish defensive perimeters and maintain a containment strategy rather than pursue them to their homeworld. Containment. Vasquez questioned sharply. The Voth will rebuild, adapt, and return stronger. We've seen their biological engineering capabilities. Given time, they'll develop countermeasures to everything we've deployed against them. Admiral Vasquez advocates for a decisive strike, Zterra explained, having grown accustomed to translating humanity's more aggressive strategic thinking for her consensus colleagues. Neutralize the threat at its source rather than preparing for an inevitable return. The council chamber erupted in overlapping debates. To consensus species, the concept of pursuing an enemy beyond secured borders to launch a preemptive attack violated long-established ethical principles. To humans, failing to eliminate a proven threat while holding tactical advantage seemed foolishly naive. After 3 days of contentious deliberation, the council remained deadlocked. The consensus representatives couldn't authorize an offensive into unexplored space, yet recognized the strategic logic behind the human position. Admiral Vasquez accepted the decision with surprising calm. Later that evening, she joined Zaitara on an observation deck overlooking the station's massive docking bays. "Your Earth vessels are departing," Zaitara noted, watching as the Dreadnoughts Thermopylae, Normandy, and Iwo Jima disengaged from their berths. "Returning to Sol system." "Not exactly," Vasquez replied quietly. Sometimes asking permission ensures plausible deniability for one's allies. Zaitara's crest rippled with sudden understanding. "You're proceeding to the Voth coordinates without authorization." "Earth has made its own assessment of the threat," Vasquez stated simply. "The consensus can officially disapprove while benefiting from the outcome. The council will be outraged." "Only if we fail." Vasquez checked her communication device. "My transport leaves in 30 minutes." Zaitara was silent for a long moment, internal membranes shifting as she processed competing ethical imperatives. Finally, she activated her command interface. "This is Admiral Zaitara. Prepare my flagship for immediate departure. Priority override Alpha 7. Vasquez raised an eyebrow. "The Council hasn't authorized consensus involvement." "They haven't forbidden it either," Zaitara replied. "And I find I've developed certain human instincts regarding unfinished conflicts." 26 hours later, the Earth Dreadnoughts emerged from FTL at the edge of the Voth home system, immediately engaging the orbital defense platforms that surrounded the third planet. 17 minutes after that, Zaitara's battle group arrived, joining the assault against overwhelming Voth forces. "Your timing is impeccable, Admiral." Vasquez's voice came through the comm channel, backdrop filled with the sounds of intensive combat. "I've learned that humans place considerable value on the concept of watching one's back," Zaitara responded, directing her vessels into supporting positions. The battle raged with unprecedented intensity, but even the combined Earth consensus forces struggled against the concentrated Voth defenses. Standard tactics were failing. Victory seemed increasingly unlikely. "Conventional assault isn't working," Vasquez acknowledged during a brief tactical conference. "Time for something unconventional." The Grand Hall of Harmonia erupted in thunderous sounds of approval as the Treaty of Galactic Alliance was formally ratified. 6 months had passed since the Voth homeworld operation, and the political landscape of known space had transformed completely. Representatives from 30 species, the original consensus members, Earth, and now 2 delegations of independent Voth colonies, gathered to witness the historic moment. Admiral Zaitara, recently promoted to Grand Admiral of the newly formed Alliance Fleet, observed the proceedings with measured satisfaction. Her ceremonial mantle now displayed both consensus honor markings and the silver earth oak leaf cluster that humans had insisted on awarding her. "Never thought we'd end up here," Admiral Vasquez commented quietly, resplendent in her formal Earth uniform. The human bore a visible scar across her left cheek, a memento from the final confrontation on the Voth homeworld. "Your unconventional approach certainly accelerated diplomatic developments," Zaitara replied dryly. The unconventional approach, as it was now officially described in Alliance records, had involved a high-risk infiltration operation rather than continued conventional assault. While Earth dreadnoughts and consensus vessels engaged Voth defenses, A joint special operations team, including human Marines and Zetara's own commando unit, had deployed to the planet's surface with a specialized payload. Rather than the planet-destroying weapon many consensus scientists had feared, the humans had developed something far more sophisticated. A targeted biological agent designed not to kill the Voth, but to disrupt their hive mind while preserving individual consciousness. The Queen, suddenly experiencing autonomous thought for the first time in her species' evolutionary history, had ordered her forces to stand down. Grand Admiral Vasquez, High Speaker Morella's containment sphere approached, pulsing with formal colors. The Council requests your presence for the commissioning ceremony. They followed Morella to the station's massive observation deck, where delegates had gathered for the unveiling of the first jointly designed Alliance vessel. The ship dwarfed even the Earth Dreadnoughts, combining consensus elegant energy systems with human practical defensive architecture. The GSV Harmony represents a new chapter in galactic security, announced the Thelosian ambassador. With weapon systems we hope never to use and defensive capabilities that ensure lasting peace. As the diplomatic pleasantries continued, Zetara noticed Vasquez engaging in quiet conversation with several human officers who had just arrived. Their expressions suggested something significant had developed. "Problems, Admiral?" Zetara inquired when Vasquez rejoined her. "Perhaps," Vasquez replied, subtly directing Zetara's attention to a secure data tablet. "Our deep space monitoring network detected these energy signatures from beyond the galactic rim. Pattern analysis suggests artificial origin, but nothing matching known species." Zetara studied the readings with growing concern. "Have you informed the Council?" "Not yet. Earth has redirected 3 exploration vessels to investigate, but they won't arrive for several months." Vasquez's expression remained carefully neutral. "Meanwhile, our shipyards at Jupiter have accelerated production of the new Sentinel-class vessels." The treaty explicitly capped military expansion, Zetara pointed out. "It capped publicly acknowledged expansion," Vasquez corrected. "Some lessons from our history bear remembering." Before Zetara could respond, they were called forward for the ceremonial activation of the Harmony's primary systems. As the gathered representatives applauded the symbolic achievement, Zetara found her thoughts dwelling on the energy signatures from beyond known space. Later that evening, she made her way to the Earth diplomatic compound. The guard recognized her immediately. "Admiral Vasquez is expecting you, Grand Admiral." Zetara found Vasquez in a secure briefing room with Earth's senior military staff. Star charts and tactical projections covered the displays. "You've made your decision, then?" Vasquez asked, dismissing the other officers. The consensus achieved unity through peaceful cooperation, but maintained peace through willful ignorance of potential threats, Zetara stated. "I find I prefer the human approach to security." Vasquez nodded, activating a detailed projection of Earth's hidden military preparations. "Welcome to Operation Sentinel." Then, "We've already begun establishing advanced monitoring posts in these sectors." As the 2 admirals analyzed defensive positions and contingency plans, a junior officer entered with an update. "First contact package from the unidentified signals has been partially decoded. Preliminary analysis suggests a hive-based consciousness, but significantly different from Voth patterns." Vasquez and Zetara exchanged knowing glances. Whatever waited beyond the rim, the galaxy would not be caught unprepared this time. The lessons learned from Earth's dreadnoughts had changed everything. "Begin preparations for first contact protocols," Vasquez ordered. "And alert the Peacekeeper fleet to standby status." In the observation dome above them, the stars shone with peaceful brilliance. For how long, neither admiral cared to predict.